Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about the Paris 2024 games, and I'm joined by Antoine Bouchard.
Hi, thanks for having me. So, my name is Antoine Bouchard. I'm a national coach for Judo Canada, so I coach the national team. I'm a former athlete who represented Canada at the Olympics in 2016, where I took a fifth place. I was also part of the national team for a little bit over 10 years, so I've done my fair share of judo, and I hope I can help you and share my experiences to give my input about these 2024 Olympics.
Thank you very much for joining us. I've interviewed you countless of times, and you've been very gracious with your time and informing all of us on all things related to judo. And my first question, Antoine, I'd like to ask you is, it's the 100th anniversary of judo in Canada. What does this anniversary mean to you personally and professionally as a judoka, Olympian, and now coach at the National Training Center?
So for the 100th anniversary of Judo Canada, I think, when you do any sports, like for example, for us it's judo, you have your routine, you have your daily trainings, your ups and downs, and you're really like centered on your own world. But then when you realize that it's been 100 years since Judo Canada exists, really makes you take a step back and realize that you're not the only one that went through this. There's a lot of other athletes in the last 100 years that did stuff that were similar to you. But most importantly, the one thing I thought about when I realized it was the 100th anniversary of Judo Canada was how many people put all of those efforts in making what judo is today in Canada. Because judo obviously is not like hockey. It's not the most popular sport in Canada. It's a very niche sport, if you want to say it like this. Not as popular, not as well known. So all of those people that put countless efforts into making what judo is today in Canada, to me, is really a proof that we have a great sport. We have great people doing this sport, and that that is a motivation an additional motivation for me to really help this whole machine to keep going and make Judo Canada and judo grow in Canada in the next years.
Fascinating answer. If I may ask a follow-up, can you elaborate as to what you mean when you say there's other people involved to make this sport? Can you give us examples of these people? Like who describe their role within the big machine
It,
and its
it
history?
So I think obviously if you think about judo in Canada, you need to think about Sensei Nakamura in Shidoka because he was really the one that brought high performance in Canada, the one that really like put judo on the map in Canada. He was one of the reason we had a good national team uh, like 50 years ago, but he's the one that brought up Nicholas Gill, who's been like our first big judo player for that the first big Canada player in the world. And from there, obviously, Nico Gill is still implicated in judo. He still helps a lot to make judo grow bigger. So it's always like all of these people that, you know, judo gave to them, and now they give back to judo to help it grow and make it bigger.
Very interesting. If one more follow up on this topic, how important is it to have these people within this community? Because when you go to tournaments, you see them all there. They're all involved in different capacities. But for you, as someone who you grew up in that system, right? You moved up the ranks. You got to compete in the Olympics and so on, this, that, and the other. So you have you've gone through that process. When you go to events and you see all these people and you see that big picture, what does it all mean?
Well, I think obviously it's a source of inspiration because when I was a kid, like 6 years old, that's when Nico won his second place at the Sydney Olympics. And, it was like he was the person I was looking up to that I wanted to become as a judo player. And then you realize when I moved to Montreal, he was national coach, but he still feels like someone you can have a chat every day, like very humble and very like he was available for all of us, and now he's still helping. Then it makes you reflect on, well, if someone like him can do it, I can also do it. I can also help to make judo bigger. And I hope that, throughout my career, there's one person maybe that it is gonna have the same train of thought that I just had. That it's like, well, if he was able to he had this whole career, he competed internationally, and now he's like helping, it can be club level, provincial level, national level, then how can I help to make the sport bigger also?
Right. So the theme of continuity is very important, right, in the community and giving back and ensuring that there's a whole new generation of athletes and competitors. And that's all great. And it's funny because I have a follow-up question. Well, it's another question, but it's somewhat related. With the Paris Olympics less than 2 weeks away and the Paris Paralympics less than 40 days away, what emotions and thoughts run through your mind as an Olympian when you think of the Summer Games? And it's funny because there's a clip where you're standing there for your last match at the games there, and Nico's also and Nicholas Gill is also in that clip. Anyway, so yeah, answer this question here. He was coaching you, obviously. He was your coach for.
No, yeah, Nico was my coach for most of my career. Actually, he was there for me. So to answer your question about what goes through our minds, it's like as you said, it's very close. Like I would say, it's obviously like the summum of a career to be able to go to the Olympics. It's what you work for your entire career. Because games only happen once per 4 years. We'll talk about the Olympic qualification process later, but it is like a very hard 2 years to qualify with a whole lot of ups and downs. So when you qualify, that's already it's a big step, but also it's just the first step when you think about it, because from then it's about performing at the Olympics. So it's about the whole preparation. So there's that big excitement that you achieved your qualification, your childhood dream, but then it's about, you have training is getting very intense. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of exhaustion building throughout those weeks of preparation towards it, but also, it's always keeping that goal there. I need to perform there, so that's what needs to drive you. And I think, we just had the Olympic camp in Montreal, and I think emotions were very high for a lot of athletes. There's a lot of exhaustion. We try to push the athletes as much as we can to make them uh, fight as exhausted as possible. I'll say it like this, so that if they arrive in a similar scenario at the Olympics, then they are in familiar zones and then they can achieve their best performance. But I think, as I said, a lot of excitement, but it's also there's a lot of ups and downs in the leading weeks in order to have an optimal preparation.
Antoine, you're coach now. What's it like transitioning from athlete to coach, especially in this situation here where you're seeing these athletes, being pushed to their limits as you've just described? What's it like seeing them not as teammates anymore, but as well, they're still teammates, I would imagine. It's, whatever. You're all buds, you're all friends, etc. I would imagine. But you're also a coach now. You have a different perspective, and or do you have a different perspective? What's it like?
Well, I think, as you said, one thing that's very important for me to keep in mind is that, they're all my friends. They were my teammate for plenty of years. But at the end of the day, we're all a big team. I can be an athlete, I can be a coach. When I was the one on this line to go to the Olympics, I had a bunch of people that were helping me preparing for the Olympics. And I think from the moment that I knew, so for 2021, where for Tokyo, I wasn't going to the Olympics, then I knew that if my goal was not to get a medal at the Olympics, then I would do everything in my power for my teammates to get a medal at the Olympics. And I think it's been the same idea for this preparation. I have a different position now. I'm a coach, but my goal is still for those athletes that are going to represent us at the Olympics to get a medal. So whatever I can do to help them, I will. Like if they ask, like they are gonna ask other athletes, obviously, but if they ask me, oh, can I throw you? I will say yes, because if this is the one little thing that I can do to help them improve, then I'll do it, and I will do everything almost they want so that they can be ready for the big day.
Fantastic. And if you don't mind me asking this question, as you were talking about the last couple of weeks or days, pardon me, that training has cranked up, right? The intensity has gone to the roof. Can you elaborate on that? Well, what does that actually mean? And when emotions are running high, like, can you describe what that feels like as a coach, pushing
Well,
athletes to their limit? And yeah, please fill in the blanks here.
so volume is always very high, but the one thing that is going to be different from other preparation is that the intensity is very going to be cranked up, but also it's going to be focused on those six, but like couple of athletes that are going to represent us at the Olympics. So like all the trainings, all the focus is put on them. So, and when I was talking about putting them under pressure, so what we do is that we put them um, on front of the line in front of everybody, and we send them fresh partners. So for a couple of rounds, the goal behind that is that um, if it's going to be very exhausting to fight a fresh partner after a couple of like after a couple of minutes with a first partner. And it's to recreate this feeling of, you're exhausted, you get into golden score, so in overtime during a regular match, and you have to fight and keep pushing, even though your partner might be a little bit more in shape, you got to keep pushing in order to get that win, to get that score, or to, maybe get that last penalty. And when I talk about all the emotion, it's because it's something that's very exhausting, both physically, obviously, but mentally, because your your body doesn't respond as well as before. You're on the spot. Everybody's looking at you. You're under pressure and you need to keep fighting and always going 100%. You have like your heart rate is through the roof, but it always like you need to stand up, go back. And sometimes, you have a bad training, one bad fall, then a couple extra goes, but it's always it's that need to stand back up and go to fight again. And this is what makes it very emotional, is to see those athletes, fighting through exhaustion in order to achieve their goal.
Oh, fantastic. I don't know if there's any visuals of that. I doubt it, but just your description alone, I can imagine the intensity there. Now, before we jump into the next set of questions that I have, I just want to highlight that I saw a news release that was put out, I believe, 2 days ago. Yeah, July 12th. This is by the Canadian Paralympic Committee. It reads, Priscilla Gagne nominated to represent Canada in para-judo at the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games. And it goes on to read, Tokyo 2020 silver medalist returns for her third Paralympic appearance. Paris 2024 Paralympic Games takes place August 28th to September 8th. There's a really interesting quote that Priscilla Gagne shares here in this news release. I'm just going to read it, just the top portion here. It says, quote, "It is always an honor and great privilege to represent Canada at the Paralympic Games," said Gagne. "It's extra special for me to compete at a third Games. The 10-year-old Priscilla in me would be amazed to know her future. It's not just about representing my country, but it's representing the dream so many people who live with disabilities have. A dream to belong, a chance to prove they are more than their circumstances, and an opportunity to shine the light for others to be inspired." So obviously, congratulations to Priscilla Gagne for being nominated. And we're all going to be looking forward to the Paralympic Games. As I mentioned, they go down on, or they begin on the 20th of August and they run to September 8th. What can you tell us about Priscilla Gagne?
Well, Priscilla, obviously, like just hearing that quote, like it doesn't really surprise me. She's like a very good ambassador, very good model when it comes to para judo. I think to have someone like she's a very good representant. She's a very good person. I think, well, obviously, she she's returning for another Olympics, where the last one she took a second place. I'm sure she's aiming for gold this time. Um, she's uh she's currently training with Andre Sadej, the Paralympic coach, and she got a new training partner recently, Stephanie Tremblay, who's she used to be on the national team, competed for numerous years on the international scene. So I'm sure that they are doing everything in their power to prepare for those Olympics, and that no matter what happens, Priscilla's going to arrive on that mat 100% ready for the big day.
That's awesome. And I believe she's in Ottawa. She's in Hintonburg. She's training here at Takahashi Dojo. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So that's she usually comes once a week in Montreal to train with the national team, but she mostly trains in Ottawa.
Fantastic. Well, as I mentioned before, we're looking forward to the Paralympic Games, particularly for para judo. Now, Antoine, I want to move on to the topic of, and this is a big one here, folks. I know for most people who are listening to this, if you're a judo fan or part of that community, you're probably very familiar with the qualification process for an Olympic sport like judo. But I thought we kind of break this down for everyone else out there who may be listening to this who might not be very familiar with the sport, right? Some people think you just sign up for the Olympics and compete. It doesn't work like that, right? There's an entire qualification process. And Antoine, I thought I would, ask you about this because I think it's very important for us fans to fully grasp and understand the long road to the games. So if you could tell us the qualification process for Olympic judo.
Yes. So judo at the Olympics, the way to qualify, very simple. Got to be top 17 in the world. So it's top 17 in the world at the world ranking. Other rule, only one person per country. So for example, if there are two Japanese in the top 17, then only the top one is going to go, and then you could move to 18, 19 until you have your top 17 athletes from a single country. The Olympic qualification process is
Did you say 17 athletes from a single country?
no from a well, okay. So I'll rephrase. It's 17 athletes from like it's only one per country. That's what I
Right.
meant.
Okay. Pardon me. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
I guess
For a
but
second, I was like, what?
yeah, poor English, sorry.
No, it's
So
all good, my
yes,
friend.
so top it's top 17 in the world, only one per country. The Olympic qualification process lasts two years. So for us, it started in June 2022. And depending on the level of the tournament and the ranking you achieve at that tournament, you're going to earn some points on the world rankings. An example, very simple. If you win world championship, it's going to be worth more points than if you do a third place in a Grand Prix, for example. So you earn some points like this. And after the 2 years, the top 17, as I said, is going. So with that process, we qualified directly without any question. We had, if I am not mistaken, three athletes that qualified directly, which were Arthur Margelidon, Catherine Beauchemin-Pinard, and François Gauthier-Drapeau. One of our, as I said, only one person per country can go. So we had two categories where we had two people that qualified in the top 17. So we had 57 kilo that we had Christa Deguchi and Jessica Klimkate that were ranked number 1 and 2. And we had in minus 100, we had Shady Elnahas and Cal Reyes that were also very high ranked, both of them. I think something like they were both top 8 easily in the world. So for that, in order to decide who Judo Canada was going to send, because at that point it's our decision. Judo Canada instaurated some sort of national ranking where they prioritize people doing well at the World Championship and who's ahead at the end of the Olympic qualification. Yes. So with those criterias in mind, it's a little bit complicated. But at the end of the Olympic qualification, the people that were selected by Judo Canada were Shady, Elnahas, and Christa Deguchi. So those were our 5 qualified people. Then each country has a continental quota. So whoever is not qualified that has the most points uh, at the on the Olympic qualification ranking. So for example, for Canada, we had 3 people in the race that were not qualified, but were very close to. We had Kelly Deguchi in 52 kilos, Julien Frascador in -66, and Louis Cribert-Gagnon in -90. So whoever had the most points at the end of the Olympic qualification would get to go. So Kelly at the end had more points, therefore she qualified to go as the continental quota. And at last, uh, two another very complicated rule, but there's now a team tournament at the Olympics since 2021 for this year. So in 2021, only people that had 6 people qualified. So the 6 categories were 57, 70, plus 70, and then for the male, 73, 90, plus 90. So if you had 6 people qualified for those categories, you could fight. For this one, they decided to allow all the like they were doing a secondary selection. Whoever had 5 people qualified, they would give an invitation to the 6th person. In our case, Ana Laura Portuondo Isasi like was selected to compete at the Olympics and for the team tournament, which brings us to 7 people qualified. Sorry, it was a lot of talking. I hope it was pretty clear.
No, this is great. No, this is outstanding. Thank you very much for that explanation. What is that like for athletes who are, trying to qualify for the games? They have to, make the podium. They have to compete with talent from all over the world. I'm asking this in terms of from the perspective of fans who may not understand the volume of global talent there is for judo in various parts of the world, if it's Europe, if it's Asia, and so on. Can you paint that picture for us in terms of explaining how competitive the sport is? Because and I think it adds context as to how hard it is to make it, to the games, let alone the worlds and even make it to the worlds and make it on that podium. I know it's kind of a loaded question here. Maybe it's sounds obvious to some, but if you can break it down for Monsieur, Madame, tout le monde who may not fully, be
Well,
following these sports.
so I mean, I think as you said, judo like like a lot of countries do judo. Every like hockey for like if I think about hockey, only people equipped with you need a lot of equipment to do hockey. You need a good facility. You need everything. For judo, you don't need a lot. You need a judo gi, and you don't even need a mat area. You could still do judo without a mat area and train semi properly, which means like it doesn't cost a lot of money, and there are a lot of countries that have implemented judo into their school program, or it's part of, it's more like way bigger than it is in Canada. Like I think about France, for example, where you can take judo in school. Obviously, Japan, but it's also very big in Russia and in a lot of countries. So
Right.
I think, as you said, there's a wide variety of countries that compete in judo. Some countries like, you think Tajikistan, Turkmenistan that I've never heard of before doing judo. And, they have very good judo teams. So there's a lot of countries that do judo. And to know how hard it is to qualify for the Olympics, well, obviously, if you're like in the top 5 in the world, it's fairly easy because you don't have to compete so often, right? Typically, you're going to do 6 tournaments because they take your 6 best result each year. You're going to do 6 tournaments a year, probably medal everywhere, and you're going to qualify fairly easily. But when you're in that position where you're in the lower half of the top 17, so like 15, 14, you're going to need to do a lot of tournaments because, sometimes you have a bad draw, or you have a bad day, you lose first round, you don't do any points. That means you need to do another tournament to get your points. Or, you have your six results and everything's going well, but then, oh, like people behind you start to do well, so they start to catch up, which means you need to do an extra tournament. And I think, judo, sometimes it works a lot by periods. So you have two or three tournaments, you're not going to do well, but the next thing you know, you're going to have two, three good tournaments in a row. So if you're like, sometimes it's hard mentally, you have a bad performance to bounce back the week after or 2 weeks after, make weight again, fight, it doesn't go well, then, it's hard to put everything back and then just start again with a fresh mindset. So it's a very hard process mentally, especially with making weight, traveling around the world, because tournaments are not, like in they are all over the world. I've been to Japan, Georgia, Brazil, and I went to Mauritius Island once for a
Oh
tournament.
wow.
So there's a lot of tournaments everywhere around the world. It's very expensive, but it's also very hard to travel, get used to jet lag, then fight, then come back home. So there's a lot of layers of complexity to be a successful judo player, which I think is why it makes it very hard to qualify for the Olympics.
Thank you very much for that. I think that layers of complexity really, sums it all up. I think there, as fans of these sports, we may not fully grasp, how the pressure cooker that is competition outside of just the mat. It's outside of just the fight itself. It's all these other pressures and the risk also of injury. Let's face it. It's a combat sport. Injuries are rampant. And I mean, on that road to qualifications, you have all these other factors at play. You're away from home. You're essentially in, every continent you can think of in the span of 3 months or so, or not, yeah, it's a couple of weeks or so, right? Depending where you are, and it adds to it. And I think it's a subject matter that probably doesn't get fully flushed out for fans to really grasp how hard that is, right, on the athlete, and it certainly elevates the stakes, especially for those who are not guaranteed anything and who are trying to make it. By the way, what year were you in Mauritius?
Oh my, I think it was in 2015.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you think of Mauritius?
Oh, a really nice place. It was like I was on a different planet because it was like so pretty everywhere. People were very nice. It was one of my good like experience on a trip as a judo player.
That's fascinating. For people who don't know where it is, it's like basically off the coast. It's in the Indian Ocean. It's an African nation, but it's in the Indian Ocean, and it's I think the closest island or large island is Madagascar, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah.
that's really interesting. And how was the tournament experience there for you? Sorry, I know we're going off
Oh,
on a
that's fine.
side tangent.
So I did it pretty well. I did like I think I finished third, but it was like not the best organized tournament. I remember I think the one of the thing that really stuck up for me is that we ran out of electricity before the final block. So the
Wow.
finals were held without any screens. So I had my coach that was obviously coaching, but I had one of my teammate that was on the side of the mat telling me each pause how much time was left because there was no timer visible.
Wow.
So that was a very interesting experience.
Dude, that's amazing. You should write a short play or book about that. That's fun. That, you know what I'm saying? Like you're so used to the visual of the clock, right? You could see the
Yeah,
clock,
and
and now it's an auditory cue. You got to
oh,
listen.
I think I could write a whole book about like all of those little stories or little bits that happened during tournaments that didn't go according to plan.
You should, man, like a like a blog or a book or something. I think that that's fascinating, and I we probably wouldn't have heard that if we weren't talking about you know, your Mauritius experience there. And I didn't know that that sounds like a very unique has has that
Yeah,
ever happened in any other tournament?
I've never seen that happen ever. I've before or after, never heard of it. So that's why it's like I don't remember it all the time, but when I talk about Mauritius, it's like, oh yeah, we didn't have electricity.
Wow, that is incredible. I'm trying. I think two two players qualify. No, one or two from Mauritius. I think
Definitely
is
one. I can
continental.
think of one that's pretty good. So
Is it a male fighter?
if I recall, it's the 48 kilo girl.
Oh, oh yes. Okay,
Yeah,
Moran, right?
she
Moran,
came
I
in
think it
yeah.
is. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Now, thank you very much for the explanation there on the qualification process. I think that's very important for us to have covered. We're going to jump into the next phase of this interview where I'm going to ask you three questions, three of the same questions for each representative on the Canadian team that's going to be competing at the Paris 2024 games. First question will be, I'll read the three questions first, and then we'll jump into we'll profile the athlete. First question is, what are this athlete's standout skills and strengths that make them a strong contender at the Paris 2024 Olympics? Question number two, can you share a bit about this athlete's journey to qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympics? And final question, what do you believe will be their key to success? So those are the three questions. I'll repeat them obviously as we go through. Let's start with the under 52 kilo women's division, Kelly Deguchi. What are her standout skills and strengths that make her a strong contender at Paris
So
2024?
I'll obviously I won't name everything that I think makes her good or bad, but I think uh from having watched her at a couple of tournaments, one thing that I noticed that is pretty impressive is that she's able to go for some very lengthy rounds. Like I've seen her going deep into golden score, so overtime, and be able to clutch those wins. Like even if the fight is super far. So that is like some resilience. She's really able to go and like she keeps going even though she's exhausted. Like you can see she doesn't give up. So that to me is one of her standout quality. I could go more in deeper for other things, but I think this is like one thing that I could share. You know that she's able to keep fighting even through exhaustion.
That's definitely an asset. Now, question number two, can you share a bit about this athlete's journey to qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympics?
So, Kelly, as I said, got the continental quota, so that means she did not make it in the top 17, but she did have the uh, highest number of points from all the non-qualified from Canada. She was fairly close to qualifying, out, like outside of the quota.
Mhm.
She had a really I think like good first year. She did a couple of top sevens in Grand Slam. Then I think middle 2023 to early 2024 was not as good. She struggled a little bit, but then she really came back strong in those last couple of months to the last couple of months of the Olympic qualification. She came back for it, and I think most notably in her last uh, three tournaments before World Championship, she did like two top sevens in Grand Slam, which is really good. That was in Baku and in Antalya in February and March. I think the big result that she achieved near the end was her third place at Pan American Championship that really cemented or really gave her a big option on the Olympic qualification, and that's how she achieved at last her dream of going to the Olympics.
Right, and I think her Newaza is pretty good as well, right? I
Yeah,
think
she like well, obviously she's Christa Deguchi's sister, and they both train in Japan. And like one thing that's really fascinating about the Japanese judo is that they you go there, you don't see them do a lot of newaza, but they all have this one move that's so amazing that they're going to be always dangerous each time they're going to arrive in that position, and that is exactly what one of Kelly's strengths.
Now you mentioned that this is her first, she's going to her first ever Olympics. So the question that I have for you is what do you believe will be her key to success, especially considering this is her first one ever?
Well, I think one thing she should definitely like base or not base her strategy obviously, but one thing she should take advantage of is all the momentum she gained since February. So as I said, she had a really last couple of months were pretty good. So in January she was wouldn't say out of the quota race, but she was really behind the other two athletes for the quota. But in February, then March and April, she was able to really get those key wins to earn some points and gain that quota back near the end of the race. So I think she should build on that momentum, that mental resilience and that never give up attitude to she should arrive with that mindset at the Olympics in order to get those big wins at the beginning of the tournament.
Right on. We're gonna wish her all the best. Obviously, we'll be watching her compete. We're gonna move on now to the under 73 kilo division, which is the men's. We've got Arthur. Tell us a little bit about him. First question is, what are his standout skills and strengths that make him a strong contender at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games?
So again, I couldn't name a bunch of qualities that Archer has, but I think outside of experience, because he's been on the circuit for a long time now, I think one of the his biggest strength on the mat is that he has a wide variety of techniques that he can throw you or that he can achieve a win with. So both standing but also on the ground is very dangerous. So I think this is his biggest asset is that he's very versatile. He has a lot of ways that he can achieve a win.
How follow up? How important is that versatility? Do you think? And like, is it this is a general question, but how common is versatility in the sport? And I ask because maybe I'm implying that it's not, you don't see this sort of versatility across the board. What the hell do I know? I'm just a fan. Please educate me on it.
Well, I think it's important, like I think having, for example, one big move can bring you up to a certain level, but then once you're on the international circuit and people start to know you, this is where versatility is going to be very important to get, that surprise technique that the other person didn't expect, or, to be able to adapt to the different judo style, different situations. Also, Archer has a great newaza move. So to take advantage of every single occasion he gets on the ground, like got him a lot of big wins in the past. So I think, again, if you want to be a successful judo player, you cannot just have one or two big moves.
Absolutely. And his versatility makes him dangerous everywhere and very fun to watch, particularly on the ground. Obviously I'm a fan of his Newaza. Follow-up question or question number two. Can you share a bit about this athlete's journey to qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympics?
Well, Archer had a very interesting Olympic qualification cycle. He started with like a seventh place at Worlds. Then he had a really strong first year. And then after achieving a big fifth place at Worlds in 2023, he had a little bit of a lower period, like a calmer period, I would say, but he came back really strong in the last couple of months of the Olympic qualification, a little bit like Kelly, but I like his results were even like better. He got a third place in a Grand Slam and he won Continental Championship in April 2024. So he had a really good, like he started off very strong and he finished off very strong, which is always a good sign that shows that he had overall a good Olympic qualification process. I think for the Olympics, he's going to be seeded number 8, which is a testimony of how good he was during the qualification process. So yeah, I think yeah, overall a pretty good period for him.
What do you believe will be the key to his success?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, I mentioned his versatility, but also his experience. So I said it earlier, he achieved a seventh and a fifth place at World Championship during the Olympic qualification process. So during the hardest World Championship. Last time in the Tokyo 2021 Olympics, he did a fifth place. So I think just having the experience of those big matches, that he's going to be comfortable at the Olympics because he did one already in the past. And, the closer he's going to get to a medal, he's going to be in familiar ground. He knows that he did all of this process. So I think just building on that experience could be a key factor in order for him to uh, get that medal.
Versatility and experience. That's quite the 1-2 combo. We wish him all the best. Of course, we're moving on now to the under 57 women's. We've got Christa Deguchi. What are this athlete's standout skills and strengths?
Well, I think she has a lot of strengths because I mean, she's ranked number one in the world. So I think that means she has a lot of strength. But I think like one thing that always amazes me when I watch her is how dominant sometimes she can look. Uh, so she won like world championship twice. And one time was, I think, like I might be mistaken. I think one time was like 2019
Right.
or
18
2018.
or
I think no, was it 19? 19, and then she won 2022, if I remember. No,
that's
2023.
yes.
2023. Sorry. Yes, I have it 19 and 23. And I think it was in the 2019 uh World Championship. She just destroyed everybody and she made it look so easy. And it's like she's very calm, very strong in her attack, very dangerous. And even sometimes when she's in an uncomfortable situation, like she remains calm and she's able to reverse the situation in order to get the advantage. So I think just like how simple judo looks when you watch Christa is one of the things that amazes me.
Yeah, she got the bronze in 2018 in Baku.
Yep,
2019 she got gold, and in Doha. Sorry, 2019 in Tokyo she got gold, and in Doha 2023 she
exactly.
got gold. And yeah, no, impressive resume. As far as can you give us context to her journey to qualifying? Well, I think you've just answered it, but
Yeah,
if you can
uh,
dive in there.
so
Actually, there's more here, but yeah.
she had a very like I mentioned it earlier. She was competing with Jessica Klimkate. So I mentioned
Mhm.
that Krista was number one in the world, but Jessica was number two in the world at the end of the Olympic qualification. And because as I said, Kat, like the way the ranking was done, they had to really push each other and do like all of those little points they could get in major events, they had to reach them. So you look at her like at both of the players' 2 year Olympic qualification, and it's just like first places in Grand Slam, medal at World Championship, medals at Masters. Like it's a very complete board. Like they both did really good. At the end, like Christa, like she won 2023 Worlds, and in 2024 she just did second. So she had an amazing qualification process. Obviously, she's number one in the world, so it's self-explanatory. But I think she arrives at the Olympics with a whole lot of confidence. That's for sure.
What do you think is going to be the key to her success?
Well, I think the fact a little bit like Archer, but even one step further, like the fact that she has uh, so much experience into World Championship finals, those like big events where like I'm just looking for fun. She has 11 Grand Slam gold medal, one Masters gold medal, and two World Championship gold medal, and that's excluding smaller tournaments. So just that big match experience is going to be a key for her because it's her first Olympics. So that might add a little bit a layer of stress, but I think just like this, if she can get this confidence that she has on those big days where she achieves goal, then I think that that could lead her to a gold medal at the Olympics this year.
My goodness, it's going to be really entertaining to watch her at the games, and obviously we wish her all the best. It's yeah, it's going to be incredible. Moving on here to the under 81 kilo division for men's, we've got François Gauthier-Drapeau. What sort of standout skills and strengths can you flag regarding François Gauthier-Drapeau? Sorry,
Very
there's a play on word with flags. That's why I was laughing. Yeah.
Very simple. He is one of the strongest person I have ever put my hands on. He's
What? For
super,
real, eh?
yeah, super strong.
Wow.
Like like not just stiff. He's like so strong. If he gets his right arm on you, it doesn't move. So that's
Wow.
his biggest strength by a mile. The fact that and just not just like his gripping, his whole like body, his whole posture, like he feels so strong, feels so hard to move, and like requires so much energy to fight him or to make him move.
Interesting, because I remember seeing a clip of him in Mongolia, I believe it was, and he was wrestling with do you know the clip I'm talking about?
Yes, yes.
And I didn't even recognize him. I'm like, because if you look at the clip, like he gets thrown by they're doing a style of Mongolian traditional wrestling. I think there are four different styles. I don't know which one it was. And he got thrown. I was like, what the hell? Who's this guy throwing? François. And how come? And if you look at the clip, François looks rather like he didn't know what to expect, so maybe he was a
Yeah.
little concerned about potentially getting injured. But I'm like, man, these
He's
Mongolian
well,
wrestlers. Go
he's
ahead.
a very goofy guy. Like he loves to like, mess around and all, but when he really puts his mind into it, he's very into it, I would say.
Yeah, when he flags it, it's game over, and we see this when he fights. He really gets into the zone, and you know, I think
Yeah,
that strength he's
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
He's a tough player to find when he's in that zone.
Yeah, and he seems very mentally tough. Like he's very resilient. When he
Yeah.
gets into that focus zone. Follow-up question or question number two, that is, can you share a bit about this athlete's journey to qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympics? There was a really interesting, sorry, before you answer that, there was a really interesting article that I read last day. It was published on, I think it was La Presse. I'll just read the title in case some people want to read it. It's called the title of the article reads François Gauthier-Drapeau à la recherche du temps perdu, and it really dives into. Well, I'll let you chime in on this, but yeah, if you could tell us about his road to qualifying.
Yeah, so I think for the article you're referring to, I think it goes back a little bit, like a couple
It
of
does.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I think in 2018 when he was still a junior or almost a senior, he tore his ACL, therefore he got surgery. So he missed almost the entirety of 2019. That gave him the opportunity to really put some muscles around his body. So he came back as an 81 kilo, fought at the national championship in 2020, and then COVID happened. So he couldn't fight for a couple of months. Then until the 2021 Tokyo Olympics, unless you were trying to qualify for the Olympics, you were not allowed to uh, fight internationally. Nobody was competing, so he couldn't fight. So he almost didn't do any tournament for like 3 or 4 years. And but, training with him every because we were in very small bubbles or 4 or 5 person, and I used to train with him every day. And I was like, yeah, like like when he's gonna start to compete, he's gonna be strong because I felt him like very dangerous, very strong, as I said. And as soon as he started to compete, he got really good results internationally, beating top players right away. And as far as the Olympic qualification process went for him, it went really good. It was very consistent from the beginning up until the very end. A lot of podium places on in Grand Slams. Also notably a fifth place at the World Championship in Doha in 2023 and winning Pan American Championship also in 2023. It was, as I said, very consistent throughout the Olympic qualification, a lot of podium places. And I do not remember exactly what position he finished in. I think He's gonna be, I think he's seeded
Six.
number 5.
Okay. Okay.
I think. Yeah, I might be
I think you're
mistaken.
right. Yeah, I thought it was six, but it might be
He's
five.
fairly high. So that again, when you're in the top 8, that means you had a really good qualification process. So for him to be like, 5 means that he had a really good process.
Yeah, he sure did. And the reason why I flagged that article is because, there's this recurring theme that at least we come across with a lot of these athletes is how they deal with like setbacks, and by setbacks I mean injuries obviously are one reality, but in his case in the article it dives into that whole process where he basically didn't compete, and when he did compete, as you mentioned, COVID happened. So there's always this recurring theme of setbacks, and the reason why I want to mention that is that sometimes we don't realize, like, we as fans, whatever, don't really grasp like how hard it must be dealing with these setbacks, but still, being committed to the fight and remaining in there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
remaining, which is remarkable, because it's you could say, oh, it's easy to just throw in the towel or transition out or what have you. But for someone to still find their to recover from an injury and still have the focus and still pursue the goal even after the pandemic happens and this, that, and the other. It's just remarkable, I think,
Well,
and I think these sorts of things we don't. It's almost a given. It's almost implied that there's setbacks, but we don't
well,
talk much about that.
I
Sorry,
think
we don't.
to jump a little bit on what you're saying, I
Please.
think the one thing is, you know, to be a success, like, you can be a great athlete, but if you're not mentally strong, you're only gonna get so far. I think the reason why we don't really talk about it is that every single athlete that makes it to the Olympic means that they're mentally strong. And what you're talking about, the setback, I think, is just about how much people really want to achieve that one dream, or what are they really true like willing to sacrifice to make it this far. Like for François, the example is, all of those difficulties or like hurdles that he had to pass in order to achieve his dream. He could have quit, after his ACL or
Right.
during COVID, because some players did, but he persevered, he kept going, and now this led him to fight, had a chance to fight at the Olympics.
Yeah, and it's incredible, and everyone has a different trajectory and different experience and different reasons as to why they choose to, as you mentioned, they're mentally tough, of course, but the reason why they still remain on board, they're still committed. And it's, just for the record, it's not a criticism as to what others choose to do, this, that, or whatnot. It's definitely not that. It's just a recurring theme for so many of these high performance athletes. It's like this the I can't even say the word, but the probability of injury and setbacks and dealing
Yeah.
with multiple setbacks, and this unique sort of trajectory of having to qualify, of course, facing the world's best. It's just there's so many layers there to explore, and I think as fans, it's no wonder people see these athletes uh, as heroes. I mean, I know it may sound cheesy for some of y'all who are hearing that, but the more you know about their trajectory and the long road that some of them have been on, at least what's publicly known or what's openly discussed, you're like, damn, this is incredible. It really makes you, as a fan, I suppose, see the sport with even more appreciation. And not everyone makes it to the Olympics or what have you, or to whatever but there's so many people who dream big and more power to all of them who put in the time. I think yeah, I could go on this topic, but I think you know what I'm saying. Because
Yeah.
each one of these athletes has that sort of story, at least
Oh yeah.
to some extent, yourself included, you know, and it's one of those things that I think it's oh, my cat's come back in here. Sorry, I gotta get rid of this cat again. This cat wants to chat. Hold up. Before I ask you the last question about François Gauthier-Drapeau's key to success, I just want to finish off the point by saying that um, I think these sports really push people to the extreme. It pushes them towards really finding out who they are, you know, and by that I mean they commit to a goal and they work hard at it. And there are many ups and downs, and everyone has their own trajectory. But what's interesting is at the end of the day, I think the journey really shows them who they are, you know, and what they're capable of. And I think that's what makes for compelling stories. And a lot of it is an internal process, right? It's the fight is in within them, right? Because they're pushing themselves. They may have external support, emotional support, this, that, and the other, but that's the magic of it. Obviously, it's an Olympic year. There's a lot of content floating around highlighting this, but I think it's important to say it's ongoing throughout the quote unquote season, right? You see these athletes pushing themselves to be the best they can be. So okay, rant over. Last question in regards to François Gauthier-Drapeau. Thank you for hanging on to me, hanging on
No,
to
it's
the rant
interesting.
there.
Don't worry.
Perfect. What do you believe will be the key to his success?
Um, I think just is like I think I mentioned it, like just taking advantage of his strength is going to be his key asset because, as I said, he's very strong righty player. So he's in these type of matchup, he's almost unbeatable. And I think just taking advantage, like putting the emphasis of those strength, is going to be what is going to make him go far. Because again, first Olympics for him, so that can always be a little bit. That can always be playing a part in the outcome of the day, both good or bad. So I think just, like just doing what he's been doing really well consistently for the last 2 years is going to be his key to achieving a good day for at the Olympics.
Fantastic. And I think people need to go read that La Presse article because you kind of get a
It's really
glimpse of
good.
it is. It's excellent. You get a glimpse of his attitude and perspective on the upcoming games. He has a very kind of laid back sort of attitude. And if you don't mind, I'll just say mention he's talking about how, you know, he's not really from the sounds of it like an extroverted person, right? Like he's not looking for, correct me if I'm wrong, like in terms of attention or anything like that. He just wants to do his own thing. And now, obviously, athletes, Olympians are going to be recognized, right? They're going to be,
Hmm.
you know, if on social media, all forms of media, everyone's talking about the games. And if I can ask you a follow up, how do you all deal with this period of attention from everyone, quite frankly, when it comes to the Olympics. How was it for you back in 2016 for
Well,
Brazil?
I think everybody deals with it a little differently. Like some people, they really enjoy it. I personally, I always happy to give interviews because, it's like, I like it. I like to talk. But it's also good for like the people asking for the interview, and it's good to promote judo as a sport.
Mhm.
And, so I liked it, but it wasn't something I was consistently looking for when it came to, the fame and everything. So they talk about the Olympic blues for certain people. I know some athletes that it was harder after the Olympics because, it's, well, now what? But for myself personally, it was never a problem. It was more like, I'm done with next thing. I had other things that I had to worry about. I never stopped moving forward. And yeah, like I think the way you describe François was really good because it's a lot of judo players are like that. They're looking to do their own thing and just focusing on what they have to do and not worrying too much about the rest.
For sure. Now we want to wish François Gauthier-Drapeau all the best at the games we'll be watching. And we're going to move on now to the under 63 kilo division, which is the women's division for Catherine Beauchemin-Pinard. Tell us what are her standout skills and strengths that make her a strong contender at the Paris 2024 Olympics.
Well, I think obviously just her experience because she has an Olympic medal already. She has world medal. She has been successful in all the stages. So junior, senior, um, all the types of tournaments. Basically, she won a medal. So she's very experienced, but she's also she never stopped grinding in the
Mm,
sense that like from the beginning up until the very end of the fight, she's always going to go hard, try to get that throw, that groundwork, that
mm.
last penalty. So she never stops, she never quits, and that's her biggest strength, in my opinion.
Yeah, she's a quintessential fighter. Like absolutely, for that versatility is there, and that heart and determination. You see it in her fights. It's always entertaining to see her fight. In terms of like she's going into this is her third Olympics, right?
Yep.
So she medaled in Tokyo. She got the bronze. What what does that do for an athlete? When they medal and now they're going into another Olympics.
Obviously, it brings a whole lot of confidence because I did it on one day, then why couldn't I do it on the other days?
Mhm.
And it's really like just solidifying the fact that you're one of the best in the world. Like it can have its load of stress, because the next tournament, so like I'm an Olympic medalist or I did well at World Championship, I need to, people are gonna expect me to achieve the same type of performance. So this can be a little tricky, but I think in her case, she's done very well, like exceptionally well actually, since her Olympic medal into like the Tokyo 2021 Olympics to like after like the 1 year buffer period, but also the whole Olympic qualification period.
For sure. In terms of, if you don't mind me asking about that expectation portion, you
Yep.
know, I've been hearing that like there's, people are expecting medals and so on. When people say that expecting medals at the games, what runs through your mind? What's the initial sort of train of
Well,
thought with that statement?
I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to say because for some players, like I think we took like the two obvious examples in our for Canada would be Christa Deguchi and Catherine Beauchemin-Pinard. They're ranked number one for Christa, number two in the world for Catherine. So obviously, for them, aiming for a medal would be like if the logic is respected, they should medal. So for them to publicly say that's what they want is just really solidifying their position to I'm at that level. This is the objective I am setting for myself. So I really don't think it's a bad thing in their case. And I think for the others either, because they are so close to it that, it's like they know that with proper training, they can do that. They can achieve this result.
Absolutely. I just the reason why I asked that is that at the same time it's so unpredictable, obviously, right? It's competition. Everyone there wants
Oh,
to win more than anything else, right? And it's
yep.
it
But in every single tournament, there's a winner, but there are also a bunch of people that sadly don't end up in the position they wanted. And you can still do a third place, for example, and not
right.
obtain the result that you wanted. But this is the nature of sports in general. And in judo, one little mistake can cost you the whole match, which is the cruel side of the sport. But it is what it is. It's like we know the risk when we do this sport.
Absolutely, yeah. And cruel is certainly the key word there. Can you share a bit about her journey to qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympics?
Well, so I mean,
She's
she's
number one.
ranked number 2 in the world, so she did really well. She started very strong. She did second place at World Championship in 2022, and she was very dominating that day. She caught all of her wins were or so were done on the ground, so it was really impressive. She was very consistent, but I think most notably, since February, she's been really good. She did 2 medals at in Grand Slam right before, like in February and March, and then at the last World Championship in 2024, she achieved a fifth place. But she did beat the French player, which is what is the reigning Olympic champion and one of the best female and judo player of all time, one of the most successful judo player of all time. So she beat her at that tournament. So it looks promising for the Olympics in a couple of days.
What's the key to success for her?
Well, I think she's so experienced. She has done so much. I think it's just keep doing what she's been doing really well throughout the years. Has been what has been her bread and butter, which is to keep the always never give up attitude, keep grinding for those points, those opportunities. That's gonna be the or key to achieve her objectives.
One thing about her that's interesting too is that when she's not competing and watching others compete, like other teammates, she's very vocal and loud, in terms of supporting and encouraging her fellow teammates. And I kind of wonder if the plan for her down the road is coaching or not. But she's written a book. Can you tell us about the book she's
Yeah.
recently published?
So well, Catherine's a good friend of mine, so she's been talking to me about it for quite some years. It's been a project of hers. I think at first she wanted to write a recipe book because she has a passion for cooking, but I think it evolved as some sort of like guide for athletes when it comes to weight cut because one of the things she's very vocal and that is source of inspiration for people is that she did struggle with eating disorder and I think just to share her experience when it comes to weight cut, how to do it properly, what you should be aiming for, what does it mean to cut weight, but most like she wants to educate people in that process because as she lived, well, or as she says it, like she lived some problems when it came to that aspect of the sport. So she wants to educate athletes, she wants to educate people into all to do it in a healthy way so that you can keep enjoying the sport and while doing weight cuts. So it's not a weight cut guide, obviously, but it's just a guide and sharing an experience on that aspect.
That's really cool, and it's for obviously for an important sort of raising awareness on an important key issues
It's
for
it's a
athletes.
taboo. Not a lot of people, and we talk about eating disorder, and people don't share, or they're it's a taboo subject in our society. And I think the fact that she's raising awareness towards it is very noble.
It is, and it's showing leadership, and it's
Hmm.
putting her. There's some vulnerability. She's putting herself out there, but I'm sure she's starting an important conversation because in any weight cutting sport, it's the elephant in the room, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you see that in various sports, but no one, as you said, no one openly talks about it. But it's awesome that she's taking the lead, starting that conversation, and she's obviously one hell of a fighter, and I think people will listen to her and check out her. She's on social media, obviously. If you want to find out where you can get that book, you can follow her, and from there you can find that book. We want to wish her all the best at the games. We'll be watching, obviously. We're going to move on here to the under 100 kilo division for the men's. We've got Shady Elnahas. Tell us, What's this athlete's standout skill and strength that makes him a strong contender at the Paris 2024 Olympics?
I think he's so dangerous. Like at all the time during the match, he's one, he's very athletic, very agile, and like he has like crazy hips. So it's just so dangerous that every second of a match, every sequence, he might be able to throw you. Like even if you feel comfortable, he's gonna get into that position to slam you. He's a highlight reel person, and I think that's one of his biggest strengths, just to be able to get those big points against crazy good players. And throughout the years, he did. Like he got some really big wins against really strong player with like, crazy throws.
Absolutely. He's one hell of a fighter and a judoka. And it's interesting too because the there's a few documentaries floating around, I think both of which are by CBC.
Mhm.
He's part of the series called Make or Break, the Toyota Make or Break, pardon me, Toyota Make or Break series, where they document 8 Olympic and Paralympic athletes throughout the intense final year of qualification. He's part of that. In addition to that, there's also Radio Canada who put out a documentary. I think I've seen the French one here, this one here by Radio Canada. It's called Le Rêve Olympique, pardon me, Shady Elnahas, Apprendre ou à laisser. And it's basically, if you haven't seen this documentary, um, I recommend you check both of them out. The French one first because it's focuses just on him. It's about 22 minutes or 21 minutes and 30 seconds long. It really paints that picture of his story into the sport, and we're gonna dive right into it. I have a few follow-ups in regards to him, but I'm mentioning this because I think this sort of content really is valuable for fans to understand what's at stake for these athletes' story and the ups and downs, as we were talking earlier, the ups and downs of competition, injury, and so on, which is almost inevitable, unfortunately, in some of these sports. And so there's this documentary, which you can find online. And the other one, of course, you can find as well. So have you seen either one of the documentaries by any chance?
I definitely saw some chunk of it. I don't think I saw them in their entirety, but I saw some clips of them, and yeah, it's pretty good.
Absolutely. Actually, I wrote a review on on it. I have yet to
Really?
publish it. Like kind of because I watched it and I was like, oh, this is because I found out some things I was unaware of. Obviously, he's he's a very humble person, and he's as you mentioned, he's very entertaining to watch. But he's like an artist, he's a very creative, he's like an old soul. I don't know him personally, folks. Obviously, I've met him once or twice. I'm a fan of his judo and his fights and all that. But from the documentary, you get to see another side of this individual, and it's like he's an old. In my review, I refer to him almost like it's almost like he's a philosopher or a an artist. You know what I'm saying? Like he's there's so much more to these athletes, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Beyond the fighting. Pardon me. Question number two, and this is an interesting one here. Can you share a bit about his journey to qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympics?
Well, so a little bit like Jessica and Christa in minus 57 kilos. He had to compete against another athlete to make it, another Canadian athlete to make it to the Olympics, who was Kyle Reyes. And the journey started in a bad way for him because Kyle achieved a second place at the World Championship right at the beginning of the qualification. But I think that motivated a little bit Shady uh, to push himself in order to catch back. So they were like really pushing each other throughout the Olympic qualification. And what made the difference at the end is how good Shady was at the end of the qualification. Two Grand Slam finals in a row in March in 2 weeks. Then won Pan Am's like for the fourth or fifth times. And then on the last tournament, which was World Championship, he made it to semifinal against Kyle, and Shady got the win. Therefore, he qualified himself for the Olympics. So and he did second at the end of the day at the World Championship, which is an amazing result for him. First World or Olympic medals. So he had a really strong finish, like especially strong finish for the Olympic qualification.
One hell of a fighter. You know, he really dove deep. He showed who he was and his intensity and his heart. You know, and I think you see that through and through at the Worlds, and it's incredible, man. And I think in the documentary we see a bit of that, and it's really it's quite a story, and it's quite a journey, and the journey's not over, obviously, right? In a few weeks, in less than 2 weeks, pardon me, you know, he'll be in Paris and he'll be fighting, and I believe in the interview, in one of the interviews, he says he's going all the way. He wants gold, and
Yeah. Well,
it's
at
it
the just to add to what you're saying, at the 2021 Olympics, he fought, like, in my humble opinion, from everyone that fought at the Olympics, he was the one that looked the best. Like, he was really impressive in his wins, and he came, even though he didn't medal, he came so close to a medal, which was heartbreaking for him. And I think, like, with the last couple of results he achieved and all of the experience he gained throughout the years, I think he's really aiming again for that gold shot. He's always aiming for that top spot on the podium.
Absolutely, and he's a great ambassador for the sport, I believe. And if people check out these documentaries, you'll see what I'm saying, and you'll see what I mean. I think quickly, if I can say this, and I don't want to talk about myself, whatever, but I remember watching the world's online, of course, on jujutotv.com. I love that platform, and I'll tell you what, I don't think. I nearly had a stroke or a heart attack. I mean, it was so intense watching. You know, there's something about, like, when you're watching sports, or in this case, it happens to be, I'm a fan of combat sports. It happens to be judo. There's something so intense about these tournament formats, and you follow along, and it at one point it's so overwhelming, man. It's I don't know where I'm going with this point, but what I'm saying is, I think as fans, you kind of, you want to see your people win, and you get so immersed in it, and you're just like, man, I need to chill out. I had to, like,
Oh,
stop
it's
watching for a
yeah.
bit
Well,
and, like,
because you
shut it
live
down.
not at the same level as the athlete, obviously, but you live a little bit what they live throughout the day, because it's not like, for example, a Stanley Cup final, which is like 4 to 7 games. It's one day and that's over. So you go through the highs and lows with the athletes. So it's really like you invest yourself emotionally throughout that day
Well
with the
said.
Yeah.
Well said. So true. And I mean, it's we have access to various other sports, of course, but I must say it's a little different with this sport. I know I sound biased when I say that, but I don't know, man. It's just at a whole different level of of passion and what's at stake. You know what I mean? Because it's that competitive and that enticing as far as content goes. And when you see, someone push themselves to their limit and show up and represent, it's incredible, to witness. I mean, I can't imagine what the like, for people who have tickets, who are in Paris watching this live, man, that crowd's gonna go bananas for every
Yeah.
match. It's
Oh
gonna
yeah. The
be
French people are very invested into judo.
big time. And I think the sport will dominate the headlines as far as like, in comparison to other great Olympic sports, all 32, whatever, plus other sports. I think judo will take over because as you mentioned, they're judo crazy over there
Mhm.
for this sport. And I think fans in North America, combat sports fans, I think will will get a taste of that, if they're open to it. But it's really all this to say it's as you mentioned, that emotional investment as you as you go match to match, especially
Yeah.
the deeper you get into it, it's like, yeah, it's quite unique. Last question for you in regards to Shady Elnahas. What's the key to his success?
Well, building on those last couple of months for sure, and just doing his judo. I think it's repeating yourself a little bit. I think like myself, I think it's similar for a lot of people. It's just building on what made you successful in the last couple of years. In Shadi's case, it's just this like amazing ability to throw from almost every position. Like just like the his confidence also is something that makes him a special judo player.
Absolutely. We wish him all the best. Obviously, we'll be watching. We're going to move on here to our last athlete in the women's plus 78. We've got Anna Laura. Tell us about her.
So she has a very interesting story. So she was so I used to come like she's more or less my age, like I think 2 years younger than me, so 27 more or less. And she was a very good junior cadet, like she did fifth place at Cadet Worlds and 10 years ago almost. And she did a bronze medal 1 year at the junior world championship, if I remember correctly. I might be mistaken. But she did like definitely a world medal, and I think it was junior. She was a very up and comer, and sadly she had to stop judo for years because of concussions. She got recommended to stop judo because of concussions. So I think she stopped for like her last tournament before coming back was World Championship in 2017, and she came back around 2023. I think at the end of 2023, she started to do judo again competitively. And as I said, she got selected in order for Canada to fight the team tournament. But what brought her here, and I think I'll talk about her Olympic qualification because it was a little bit shorter since she came back in 2023. But her big win was definitely her second place at Pan American Championship. She beat Ortiz, the Cuban player, which is like a legend
Mm.
in of Pan American Judo. She won the Olympic in 2012. So just like yes, she had a shorter Olympic qualification, but she did achieve that crazy result. Like that she hasn't done judo for like so many years. Came back, took like maybe 2 or 3 months to adapt herself, and then she managed to beat that judo player and just make it to the second place of the podium. Is just a very impressive thing for her to do.
That's outstanding. Can you elaborate a bit more on, if you don't mind? Tell us what her style is like. How would you describe her as a judoka? How aggressive is she, and so on?
Power is the word that comes to my mind. She's very explosive. She's able off the grip. She has very good attacks, but also like if she has two hands, she's very surprisingly explosive and strong for a player of her size because she's in the plus 78, but you couldn't tell like she is way faster than a lot of like all of the girls in her category, I would say, like very explosive, and I think that's one of her biggest asset.
Now that she's back competing, how is she feeling? Is she enjoying it? Is she happy to be back and all that?
Well, I think she always loved to do judo. The problem was just she couldn't do it because she had a couple of big concussions. But I think she's training full time with us, and she's really enjoying it. And I think she's been taking a lot of pleasure in preparing for the Olympics.
That's awesome. Now she's obviously part of the team portion. Can you tell us a bit more about that and like who's part of that team that's competing? Obviously, it's some of the folks that we spoke of
Yep.
already. Is that yeah? Go ahead.
So I think for so it's six categories. Just to clarify one point, Anna Laura is also going to compete in individual tournament.
Oh, she is.
Yep. So when
Oh
you are
wow,
set,
sorry. I'm
you got
sorry.
so
I thought she was just part of the team
no,
portion.
so she was selected in order for Canada to fight in team tournament, but they all like she's also gonna fight in individual. That's kind of like part of the selection.
Oh, and I think you might have mentioned that earlier. I think earlier when we were talking about, I think you probably mentioned that, but I,
You skipped on that. It's okay. Like so, yeah. Just to clarify, she's fighting individual, and then on the last day, she's gonna fight team tournament.
okay, fantastic. You know, I'm slightly embarrassed. I should have known this,
Oh, no worry.
but the way what I read, I think was that anyway. So she's fighting in both.
Yes.
Fantastic. Tell us about what's the key to her success.
Well, I think like just the fact that she's like faster than a lot of the player and very explosive. That she's a different type of players than a lot of the plus 78 players. So I think just to take advantage of that different style can be a key to her success.
Fantastic. Now let's talk about the team portion. Yeah, the break it down for us. There's three male, three female.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that
So
on the Canadian team?
So it's hard. It's hard to predict because we have 57, we have Christa Deguchi, so she's one of the best in the world. Then we jump to 70 kilo, who's gonna be Kat BP, a 63 kilo, so one of the best 63, but fighting in 70. And then you have Annalora fighting in plus 70. She should be good also. Then for the male, you have Archer in 73. He's one of the best 73 in the world. You have François Gauthier-Drapeau fighting in minus 90, and he's at 81 kilo. And you have Shady Elnahas fighting in plus 90 as a minus 100. So we have a couple of categories where athletes are going to need fight in an other category. Obviously, that means they're going to be heavier than usual, but it's still not going to be their own category. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, which can be good or bad, right? We've seen in the past athletes from lower categories. I think I don't want to say anything. If I recall at the Olympics, Clarisse beat one of the top players in 70 kilo while she was a 63 kilo. So it's very doable, but that's one of the key aspect to keep in mind. The other one is about the draw because Canada is not going to be seeded. So, we could start with a country that we can beat, or that they have a 60 kilo instead of a 73 and stuff like that. That can be a thing, but we can also start with Japan first round.
Uh-oh.
So draws, like depending on the matchup, this can play a big part in whether or not we're gonna have a successful day. I think, just because we have a couple of players that are really well placed in some categories, I think that we can do a fair share of damage, and I think a medal is obtainable for us. In
Wow.
my humble opinion, I think it's really not impossible for Canada to get that medal in team tournament.
Outstanding. I think I've heard a few people describe, but we're almost going to wrap up, by the way, another 5 minutes if that's okay.
Yep.
I've heard people describe this squad, this team of judokas, individually and collectively as like one of the best teams ever formed, one of the best squads ever formed to represent Canada at the Olympics. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we are fortunate to be in one, like probably the strongest overall generation of Judo Canada ever. I think since I would say it started around 2012, and then we're still living in it. It started with Antoine achieving his bronze medal at the London Olympics. Then you have, like Jessica, Christa, Kat BP doing world medals. You have Jessica and Kat BP that did bronze medal. You have male athletes that did fifth place both at the Olympics and World Championship, like Shady, Archer, François, myself also. So we have a lot of really good, like throughout the generation, we had a lot of athletes. And what I think is one of the big advantage compared to 2021 is that a lot of our athletes went through those big matches. So Kat has an Olympic medal, Christa has two world titles, Archer and Archer flag got a fifth place at Worlds. Shady has a silver medal at the World Championship. So I think we, on top of being very talented and very good, they now have the experience of big matches. So I think that that is definitely one big advantage and one reason why people describe it as one of the best team we ever had.
What does this do for the up and comers, then the next gen, and those athletes who dream, to make it to
Well,
LA 28s and beyond? Like what does that do for them? Because there's a lot of players here that are just, as you mentioned, all of them, they're outstanding. They're quite the
what's
role models.
exactly, it's definitely a source of inspiration because, you know, obviously we're not judo, we need a lot of partners and we're not like a crazy judo country. So everybody like like everybody that are like very serious train in Montreal or 99% of us from like near the end of junior years and senior. So that means that they get to fight and, talk with all of those top players in the world on a daily basis. So it's just, I think, good to have this winning culture in your daily training and to have those models doing well in the international scene is just extra good for the future, I think.
Love it. Winning culture. That's really an interesting term you use there. Last question for you. What are the coaches? Who are the coaches that are going to Paris along with the team? And what are they telling you? What are their thoughts on the squad and so on?
So Antoine Valois-Fortier is going to be well, he's our head coach, so he's obviously the one going. So he's been traveling with the team ever since he retired at the after the last Olympics, and he's going with Maestro, so Janusz Palowski, who was a very successful players for Poland in the 80s with Olympic and world medal. He was also like I think a lot of people internationally know him as Jessica Klimkate's coach because he's
Hmm.
always with her, and always, he's really helping her. But he's also been helping a lot the rest of the team uh, to perform. He's been traveling a lot with the team, so I think like those are the two coaches that are going to be with the team, and I think they're very confident in their ability to perform on the big stage, and I think they've done all the preparation necessary in order to achieve that goal.
Awesome. Are they telling you anything in terms of their thoughts or their what they hope the team
Well, we don't
accomplish?
necessarily talk about objectives because I think this is obviously we're all hoping for as many medals as possible. I don't think
Hmm,
we can give a number because so many things can happen,
sure.
good or bad. But I think we've been looking at the team and how they've been behaving in the last 3 weeks, and how they're behaving this week. And I think we can safely say that every single member of the team, well, that trains in Montreal, obviously, we can say that they are ready to and they are at the peak of their like they are at the peak of their form, and they're going to be ready when the Olympics are going to come.
We can't wait. It's less than 2 weeks away, and it's going to be quite a special one for fight fans, for judo fans, for everyone. Thank you very much for your time and obviously for your perspective and insight. And if people want to reach out to you and interview you, because I'm sure there are people listening to this who probably want to start interviewing. I've seen you be interviewed when you went out to New Brunswick. I think you were interviewed by Sergey. Yeah. So I'm
Mhm.
just wondering, like, are you open to having others interview you? Obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest is to reach directly Judo Canada if they want to do some interview with either myself or other athletes. or other member of the staff. I think the easiest way is to talk to reach Judo Canada and to ask them for certain certain people. And yeah, I think that would be the beginning.
Awesome. One last question. Where are you going to be watching? Are you going to be in Montreal watching? What's your plan for that week? Well, how are you going to,
Oh,
what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be
so
tweeting or posting some stuff here and there?
no,
Like
I'm
what?
not a very good, I'm not a very vocal person on social media, but I'll be with the junior team in Berlin during the Olympics. So at least I'll be
Sorry,
on this
where are you guys going to be? Where?
in Berlin.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So
Okay.
there's a big
Yeah.
tournament, 'cause the junior world championship are at the beginning of October. So we got to prepare this team on top of preparing the national team. So I'm gonna be going with there with a couple of athletes and one of the other coach, Sasha Mihailovic. And at least I'll be on the right time zone to watch the
Yes.
Olympics and to follow them. So it's gonna be a little bit more simple.
Wow. That sounds like an adventure on itself. And I'm sure being with the team there, the juniors and so on, it'll be a special one. Yeah, man, that's really cool. Thanks again for doing this and always being willing to engage and talk. I think I've always enjoyed this, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well, my friend. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
well, thank you for inviting me. Always a pleasure to talk with you. It's fun to just hear someone else's opinion and perspective from someone like I would say outside of the national center, outside of judo a little bit. I think it's good to have other input.
For sure, I'm just a fan, but I'm learning more hearing guys like you and gals speak on the sport. So thank you very much, and I'm sure others definitely are as well. Have yourself a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, you too.